Hi there, this is Dara here from Nurture, and in this tutorial video I'm going to talk you through how to create and run an engage session on Nurture Signal. Okay, so with an engage session, as I mentioned in the last video, this is a session that you will run directly in class with your students, and this is kind of like a catch-all session which allows you to run a lot of different check-in types with students. You can also do check for understanding with it, but it's not the sole focus of it. And this is kind of our more flexible session you can run, but it's totally up to you how you want a session to run. So I'm just going to talk you through how to actually set this up, including how to create some check-in points using our AI. And in the second half of this video, I'm going to show what that looks like in practice when you're running that session with some real students or participants. So in this example, I have a class coming up on World War II, specifically on the invasion of Normandy. So I'm just going to call this World War II, the invasion of Normandy. So that's the session name. Now my display name is just what my name will display to my students, so obviously I'm just going to leave that as is for now. In terms of generating the session then with AI, so in here you enter a prompt in for whatever you kind of want this to be about. Now, what could you put in here? Now you are limited to up to 1500 characters, but what you could add in here is a bit of a brief about the lesson plan that you're going to run with this. The more detail and context you can add in here, the better check-in points that our AI is going to be able to generate for you to release at various points in the lesson. Okay, in the future we may allow you to even just upload your lesson plan and we'll handle that for you, but for now we just have this text box to describe what the session is about and include any details you want to be used. So with that, you should enter in a solid prompt to describe your lesson. So for example, I have a very basic lesson plan put in here for this, just describing this is year 9 history. It's a 60-minute lesson on modern history unit at the Second World War, and that the lesson is the invasion of Normandy. Just a rough breakdown of what the lesson should be. Now, this is very simplistic minute, but you can use this input box to type in anything you want. So the more detail you can add, the better output it will generate for you. But what this will do is it's going to generate check-in points for you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about each check-in point in a bit more depth in a moment, but just for now I'm just going to get this to generate 4 check-in points because we can generate more later before the lesson starts. Okay, and what is a check-in point? So the check-in points in an engaged session can mean different things. So at the minute we have a couple of different check-in points. There's either a comment, a question, an engagement check, a poll, a quiz question, or a reflection. Okay, now some of these things might sound similar, so I'm going to talk through each one individually on the next screen as I can show you how each of them work. But for now, I'm actually going to turn a couple of these things off because I want to focus in on some of these things here. So I'm going to keep engagement check on, I'm going to keep quiz question on, and I'm going to keep reflection on, because these are the 3 most data rich pieces of check-ins we provide, I believe. So I'm going to leave them on for this initial one, and I'll generate some of the other ones as well after, just to show you what they look like. Now I'm going to click prepare this for later, just because I don't want this to go live just yet. If I click start now, that will generate a session and it'll start it immediately. Now your students don't have to join it immediately, but for now, if you're preparing a session to run later, I would advise just turn this to prepare for later. Now you can add a date and time, which is optional, but you don't need to include it. Again, you can just start this whenever you're ready. Last thing I'll just look at is just the settings. Now I can add this to a group if I want. Groups just essentially work like folders, so you could have a group from one of your classes, a group for a specific bunch of students. These are essentially folders that you can group your sessions into. I don't have any groups in here at the moment, so I'm just going to leave this is. Now, a couple of options in here. I'm just going to turn on allow guest participants for now. What this means is that your students basically don't need to have an account with Signal to use it. They can just join a session and type in their name. Shuffle quiz and poll answer options. So this just means that each student gets a different shuffle in the order for some of the quiz questions. On the engagement check-ins, so do you require an explanation with each check-in? Do you want to show suggested responses to help participants explain their engagement? And then comments and reactions, so can participants freely add reactions, comments and questions? Can they reply within a thread? I'll talk about all of those as well in a moment. So with that, I'll just click next. In the background, it's going to generate a session for me. Now, it's going to take my lesson plan. It's going to see what check-in points it's supposed to create, and it's going to generate them for me. That did fail just on this first attempt, but if you click the try again, it does generate on the second time usually. And what this has now generated is a bunch of draft check-in points, okay? So with this, we've got a reflection, we've got a quiz question, we've got another quiz question, a third quiz question, okay? So it actually just generated 4 check-in points, and 3 of them are quiz questions. One of them is a reflection. So each of these are what we call a quiz question. Now, I know it says question, but these are actually quiz-based ones. So what I mean by that is these are Hinge questions, okay? Which are multiple choice questions where there may be 1 correct answer, there may be 2 correct answers. But the incorrect answers are kind of diagnostic as to the student's thinking. So if a student selected one of these wrong answers here, it may give you an understanding into why a student actually thought about pick that answer essentially, okay? What I want to show you though is these are obviously all drafts. So if I want to create another one, just click view drafts, click new draft. So this is a question, and then this is a quiz question down here. So the quiz question is this multiple choice answer piece. And a question then is more like just a question that the teacher can release to students and they can type their responses underneath it. It's not necessarily to something that we use for the content of a lesson or to check for students' understanding. It's not like a free open question type. This is more useful for things like asking students, what do you think we should focus on next? Those sort of questions where they can respond to it. Whereas a quiz question has the multiple choice answers available in it, okay? A comment then is just something that the teacher can release as a comment. Again, this works the exact same way as a basic question. Students can respond to it if they want. So there isn't really massive difference between comment and a question, but it is important that you know the difference between a quiz question and a regular question. Engagement then. So this is the one thing that it didn't create for me, but I'm going to quickly create it now. So this is a prompt question which asks essentially how engaged are you, okay? Now, if I click save on this, it's created another draft to it. And in that, it's basically asked the students how engaged are they throughout the lesson. And they can pick along one of these 6 options. Now, the language that you see for these may be different in your school depending on your region. But this is just a quick engagement check that you can run with your students to see how that works, okay? What are some of the other drafts as well? So a reflection. So this is really useful then, and this is something that it actually did generate for me in the initial one, so this reflection piece. So reflect on the factors behind the outcome of D-Day using the structured framework provided. So how this works is, with a reflection, is there is a prompt question and then the student have to reflect on it, okay? So in this case, an open reflection might be what's the most important thing you learned and how will you use it? But we have a couple of other reflection types here. So like what, so what, now what? So this is what's the most important thing you learned, how do you use it? So what did you learn or notice? Why does it matter? Or what does it tell you about where you are? And now what? So what will you do next essentially? Then we have the Gibbs cycle, which is description, evaluation, analysis, conclusion, and action path. So a bit more in depth here, a bit more things for students to answer. And then 3, 2, 1 is 3 things you learn, 2 connections or surprises or things you found interesting, 1 question you still have, okay? So a lot of different reflection types you can run with your students there. Quiz questions, I've already kind of covered those. And if you want to learn more about Hinge questions, like I say, check out course 3 on Nurture Learn. And then finally is a poll. So a poll works the same as a quiz question, except in this case, you don't have to have 1 correct answer. They don't have a correct answer. It's just a polling tool that you can release to your students. But with all of these different check-in types, There's different use cases for them, and it's pretty free for you to use it how you see fit. Now, you might see in the next couple of tutorials where I'm talking about checking for understanding in a live quiz session and in an assessment session, it is essentially the quiz question and reflection check-ins, but in a much more structured flow where you're only focusing on those things. But the whole point of the engage session is that you have freedom to run a lot of different check-in types with your students. So if I go back to my saved drafts, I've got all of these here. Like, I have these 3 checking for understanding questions, have a reflection piece, and I have an engagement piece. Now, these are ready to send. Obviously, I haven't sent them. I haven't even started the session yet, but I can release these in any order that I am happy to do so in. So to show you what that's like, I'm actually going to start the session and I'm going to show you how you release these check-ins at various points throughout a lesson. So once you're ready to actually start your lesson, all you need to do is click start. Now, you could have prepared this well in advance a couple of days before, or even you could prepare these at the start of the year and you know how each lesson is going to run. But to start it, all you need to do is click this start button, and to get students to join, you just click this share button and click the copy join link and share that with your students. Now, if your students are joining as guests, you'll need to share that link with them. If they are using Signal and they already have accounts and it might be linked to your Teams or Canvas account where the student lists are pulled in naturally, as soon as you click that start button, it may appear to them on their product and they may be able to access the session. But if you're just using it in browser, you will just need to share that join link so that students can join. And you can see here now, what I've actually got is a split screen view here, because I'm actually going to show you what this looks like on the teacher side, on the left-hand side, and also on the student side here. So what the student will see here, if you share that link with them, is something like this, where they have to join the session. So all they need to do is enter their name. So in this instance, I'm actually going to enter David student, just for now. But your students should enter their own names, and I'll just click join session. And once I join, I can see that one of my students has joined here. And I'm just going to pause the video and get a couple of more students to join, just so that I can simulate what a real session looks like. So now I've had a few students join me. I'm ready to actually start sending any of these drafts to them, okay? So typically what we might do is maybe at the start of a lesson, we might just check for engagement, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to release the engagement check-in, and once I click send and then click tap to confirm, on the student side, it's actually going to ask the student, how engaged are you? So in this case, on the student side, I can say I'm taking part. I have a couple of options here to help explain why I'm feeling that way. So in this case, I can say I'm following along and doing the work. And I can also type a little bit more in here if I wanted to. So cross quite topic too interesting. Yes. So I'll just click submit. And on the teacher side, we can see as the responses come in, I am getting a very clear picture of who's taking part. I can see the responses. I'm just going to pause here and get a couple more responses in here just to show you what this looks like with more students. And after all my students have responded, I can very clearly see I've got one of them that's avoiding, one that's taking part, and one of them that's leading. Now, of course, this is just a very small sample size of only 3 students, but imagine the picture you would get with a larger class of up to 30 as well, okay? Now I can see each student's individual response here, but if I don't want to look at every single one individually, I can get the Nurture AI to summarize the insights from the comments as well. So with that, we can see participants show split engagement levels ranging from leading due to personal interest in the topic to simply following along despite finding it uninteresting to actively avoiding due to distractions. Now, that is a very simplistic analysis just based on 3 students. But again, the more responses that you have in here, the more specific that this insight can be. So that is an example of an engagement check-in you might run at the start of the class. Okay. Then as the class goes on, maybe you want to check for understanding. Okay. Now I'm going to talk more about check for understanding as well in the next couple of videos, but you can also do that directly within an engage session, because we set up a couple of quiz questions in here that we can check for my students' understanding. And just like the engagement check-in, I can release any of these after I might have taught a topic. And if I click send and then tap to confirm, it's going to give the students the question. On their side, they need to select the correct answer. So in this case, as the student, I think that this was the correct answer. And the student can say, I am unsure if it was between B and C, but I think B was right. Okay. Now, they may have obviously a more in-depth explanation as to why they might have chosen their answer, but I'll just click submit response. Like the engagement piece, I can see the answers coming in on the teacher side live. Okay, I'm just going to pause it there and simulate what it's like for the other students to submit their answers as well, just to show you what that looks like. Once all of our students have submitted, we can again get a clearer picture of who got the correct answer, who got the incorrect answer. Okay, and I've also gotten the insights in here. Okay, now if I have a quick look at the individual answers for a second, there's a lot of different things I can spot here. Okay, so I can see in this instance both these students actually left the view once, or if it showed it more than once, it'll show the number. What this essentially means is how many times did they leave Nurture to look at something else. Now I can see live that all of these students are currently away from their browser. That's just because I am using 3 different windows here. So if I was to click on this window, I can see that this student comes back in. But Signal gives you a very clear picture of what students are basically paying attention to, what's on their screen and who's not. But in the context of a check for engagement piece, I can see these students actually left to go and check something out once. And we can see here with this student is that we flag things that might have been a potential guess. So like in this case, the student said, I'm unsure if it was between B and C, but I think B was right. So again, this is likely a potential guess. Now, it was an incorrect one, but it is something to call out. And then just in terms of the insights, so 2 out of 3 correctly identified it, while 1 participant incorrectly guessed this. Again, this be a bit more useful if we had a much larger class size, but for now, I just want to show you how this works, okay? However, the main thing I want to show you here is these insights. So with this, we give you a very clear recommendation on whether you should recap and check again or move on based on how many students got the answers correct. Okay, now what you can see here in front of you is the Barton scale. Okay, now this will be covered in a lot of depth in course 3 on Nurture Learn, but essentially this scale recommends whether you should move on, recap or reteach. Okay, and this is the fundamental recommendation that we have around Hinge questions, depending on, again, how many answers were correct or not. If this was a multiple answer question where, you know, there maybe is more than 1 correct answer, we're still able to give you that Barton scale, except with it, we can, let's say if there was 2 correct answers on this question, and in this case, we have 3 students, okay, then what you'd be looking for is 6 correct answers out of 12, because you would need all 3 students to select the 2 correct answers on the multiple choice. That will inform the outcome of the Barton scale. Okay, now in this, then we have a couple of other insights that we may find useful. Obviously, we can see the number of correct answers and incorrect ones. We can see the fastest answer and the median answer. We can see our students' individual answers and what they selected. And then we have this explanation here that was generated when we created the question in the first instance. Now, this explanation has not been yet revealed to the students, but I can click on reveal here. And on the student side, we can see, we will be able to reveal to the student what their answer was versus what the correct answer was, and then an explanation of that answer here. Okay. So you can reveal those if you like, but you don't have to, okay? One last thing I just want to mention before I move on, and I noticed this myself here, is in the session settings. So if I click edit session details, I turned on, if you remember at the start, I turned on the shuffle quiz and poll answer options, okay? And what this does is it shuffles them around for students so that they basically can't be compared. I think it's B, I think it's C. They actually need to read the answers. But it's just an important point for you to be able to notice, because you can see here that the student on their view, they selected B. And then if you look it on the teacher view, the actual answer they selected was D, because that's how you set up the question. But for that student, we showed it to them as answer B because we decided to shuffle them up. So every student will get a different order for the answers that it's selected, unless you turn that option off. So that's totally up to you, teacher. Okay, so that is how you would run a simple check for understanding in the middle of a class. Okay, now on the teacher view, I can always scroll back up to the engagement piece and check that back out later. And as I then move on with the class, you might want to release more of these check for understanding questions throughout it. Once again, all of this data is going to be available to you afterwards if you want to look at it in more depth. The whole purpose of checking for understanding mid-lesson is supposed to be quick. It's supposed to give you a very clear picture of what your students have understood. It's not something you need to necessarily dwell on in the middle of class. But with that Barton scale, as I mentioned, with the whole point of this is that we're giving you very clear instruction on whether you should maybe move on, recap. So that is how you can check for understanding within an engaged session. So the last thing I'm just going to show you is, let's say, assume that I've released these other two questions later and the class is about to finish up. The last thing I want to run is maybe an exit ticket or a reflection for my students, just to reflect on the factors behind the outcome of D-Day using the structure framework provided. Now, if I click tap confirm, it will release that check-in or that reflection to my students. Now, this reflection is a what, so what, now what type reflection. But as I showed you earlier, when you're creating them, you can select the type of reflection that you want it to be. And once again, just like the other check-in pieces, students need to complete this in order for them to submit it, okay? Now there is minimum character limits on each of these. Students aren't just typing H or K and moving on. You actually need to put input into their answers. But like I said, this is how students will reflect in a session, okay? Your responses are going to appear down here, okay? The very, very last thing I'm going to show you is, even though we created a bunch of draft check-in pieces, you can always create another check-in in the middle of a session. All you need to do is click on send a message. You can select whatever you need it to be. So if you want it to be a poll, and I want this to be a poll on the tactics for re-invasion, this will generate a very quick poll for me based on whatever I put in here, that I can send to my students, and they can select whatever answers they wanted here. I can allow students to maybe select one or multiple. I can use the AI to also maybe improve the explanation, add context. There is a bunch of very quick options that I can do it here. And I can immediately post that to my students. And you can see in this case, they still need to complete this reflection first. And once a student has completed the previous check-in that was released to them, they would be able to get the next one. So this poll here. So in this case, I think heavy naval bombardment of coastal fortifications. Now this is only a poll, so adding an explanation is optional, and there isn't a correct answer here. It's just polling my students on what they thought was most critical during this phase of the invasion. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can use an engaged session. There's a lot of different check-in types, and there may be more in the future as well. But once you're happy with the session after your students have left or the session is over, you can actually get an overall insight into it. So I'll just click end session. And with that, we can get our overall insights here on the number of participants, their engagement that they had, their kind of average score on the engagement spectrum. And then you can look at individual students as well in relation to engagements.
I think as well there is some more insights if we just click on session insights. It gives us all of them to us here. And if you want to be able to maybe save this or print this out, you can actually export this to PDF, and this will generate a PDF of the entire timeline of the session for you to be able to print off and store it for later. And is it. A couple of other small things, but just before I wrap this up, if you want to show things in a presenter view, you can do that. So if I open presentation view, I can share this tab with my students. This will show each of the check-in points without showing the individual student responses. Okay. Now this is only showing the correct answer on this because I chose to show the correct answer earlier, but it will basically, if you want to show these up on the board as the class goes, as you go throughout the class, you can do that without showing each individual's responses. And anything else here is actually pretty much it. You can also preview each check-in as a participant. So if I open this up here, this just shows an overview from a participant, what that might look like. And that was pretty much it. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you can run an engaged session, and there's no right way or wrong way. It's basically whatever check-ins you feel are most useful to you. But as I mentioned at the top of the video, the engaged session is kind of a catch-all session you can run with, you can do the check for understanding in there, you can check for engagement, you can post reflections to your students. Another point I probably should have called out, but I can't show it to you now because the session has ended, is your students can also just submit comments, engagement, check-ins with you at any point if they want, outside of the structured ones. Now, that is unless, of course, in the session details you might have turned it off. So if you remember at the start, I mentioned these settings around participants can add reactions, they can add comments and questions, they can reply within a thread. If you turn some of those on and off, that may limit what some students can do. If you find that there's too many responses coming in that are outside of the structured check-ins you released, you can turn those off and you might get a little bit of a cleaner session. But try it out, see how you get on. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we'd be more than happy to clarify them for you.